さん、こんにちは。私はテナで天のMomoです。明けましておめでとうございます。Can you believe it? It's already 2021. Have you made any New Year's resolutions? If one of your goals this year is to start learning a new language, well then I got you. I have 5 tips for you on how to start learning a language based on my own experience and things that I've picked up along the way during my language journey. These are just some of the tips that work for me, and I hope they work for you too. Alright, so let's get started! Tip number 1. Find a language. Okay, this might seem like an obvious tip when you want to start learning a language, but in reality, like how else are you going to start learning a language if you don't have one in mind? Start finding a language that you're interested in. It's really hard to learn anything in general when you have no interest in it, right? Some of the classes I took in university, I had to take them because, they were just like mandatory classes, but I had no interest in what I was learning, so, lectures were very boring. And so it applies again to the language that you're going to choose. If you're just gonna pick like a random language for the sake of learning a language, it might be really difficult to be consistent in the very beginning and learn it. If you haven't already watched my language journey video, I basically explain in that video why I started learning Korean and Japanese. Long story short, basically I just loved the culture. I fell in love with it through the TV shows and the music. So I wanted to become more immersed in whatever I was watching, whatever I was listening to. I didn't want to use subtitles anymore, and that's what has pushed me to get to where I am now. Every class that I took, every time I studied, I was like so immersed in what I was learning. I know learning a language is also very difficult, but if you find a language that interests you, then it'll help you push forward and push through. Tip number 2. Find learning material. Now that you've chosen a language, find learning material. There's 2 ways to do this. 1. Take a class, or 2. Self-learn. If you have access to classes, whether it be online or in person, I recommend to take them. But if you don't want to take classes and you want to try and learn the language by yourself, then I would recommend finding either textbooks or a website that is designed for self-learners. My recommendation would be to take classes because you have your teacher and your classmates to talk to guide you and to help you learn the language. In my case, I take classes because I like structure and guidance. I remember I tried learning Japanese by myself in the very, very beginning, and it was very, very difficult. So when I started taking classes, that really helped me because I was able to ask questions to my teacher. Tip number 3. Set a schedule. This tip is pretty straightforward. Set a schedule and stick to it. You can't expect to learn a language without consistently working at it, right? This is also why I recommend taking classes, because classes force you to set time, how many hours in a week, to just focus on that language. So that's also why I personally like taking classes, because sometimes it's difficult for me to set aside time just to study on my own. And also with this tip, make sure you set a realistic schedule. Something that will fit with your own personal schedule and something that you know you'll be able to keep. Don't go crazy and think you're gonna study 5 hours every day unless you have that time. But I'm pretty sure most people don't. So make sure whatever you schedule for your study time is realistic and something you can actually keep with. And after you have set your schedule, write it down and create reminders for yourself. Tip number 4. Immerse yourself in the language. Okay, so you've started learning the language. Now what? How do you continue learning? That's easy. Just immerse yourself in the language. This is something that has really helped me in boosting my language ability and getting me to where I am today. What do I mean by immersing yourself? I mean to just listen, read, and write in the language that you're learning as much as possible. For me, this was easy. I was already interested in Korean and Japanese pop culture, so I just kept watching and I just kept listening to their music. So my ears were kind of exposed to the language a lot more than when I would set aside time to study. Watching these shows has allowed me to get used to the sounds of the language, and it helped my listening skills as well. Listening to Korean and Japanese music has also allowed me to expand my vocabulary because you hear the same words over and over again sometimes. Tip number 5. Be consistent and practice. You can't expect yourself to get better at a language without being consistent and practicing. This tip is also pretty basic, but it's true. You can't expect to run a marathon without training for it. Just like how Tanjiro in Demon Slayer couldn't pass the test without training for it like 2 years for it, right? Where my anime fans at? 어떻게 연습해요? 그냥 다른 사람하고 통화로 해요. 저는 한국인 친구가 있어서 한국말로 통화도 하고 톡도 해요. 근데 여러분, 다른 언어 할 줄 아는 사람이 없으면 찾아보세요. 어디에서 찾냐고요? 온라인! 저는 가끔씩 헬로톡에서 한국 사람들이나 일본 사람들과 메시지를 주고 받아요. 원어민과 대화하면 여러분이 배우고 싶은 언어를 공부할 수 있어요. 일석이조예요. And those are my 5 tips on how to learn a language. Let's recap, shall we? 1. Find the language. 2. Find learning material. 3. Set a schedule. 4. Immerse yourself in the language. And 5. Be consistent and practice. It's 2021. Let's make sure we follow through and achieve our goals this year. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more future videos. 자, またね!